Just a Job is the podcast for the modern woman to redefine what success looks like. We highlight real women and their real stories.
Hey everyone, happy Monday. Welcome back to another episode of Just a Job. We are so excited to share today's episode with you, but before we hop into it, we'll get started with some stand-up. So Ellen, I think I hogged majority of last week's, so I'm gonna turn the mic to you. What do you have to say this week?
You're very kind, and it is impossible for you to hog the mic because I should write like a sticky note and put it to the side of like, stop talking and stop talking about yourself, because like I do that a lot, so it's apologies. Okay. But
never.
Some weekly stand-up things. Let's see, this past week, more project stuff. It's like still trying to figure out this big company, you know? Like I just keep hearing all these conversations about money specifically, and it is actually mind-blowing to me of like the way in which they speak about money so casually. An $8 million software deal, a private jet that they're chartering for $500,000 for a one-way flight. I am not exaggerating. And it's just shocking to me. And I think it's opening my eyes to a whole new world of corporate America, but wow. I had a little bit of an existential crisis earlier this week as well, just around work in general. So that was.
Do you want to double click on that?
Oh, should we zoom in a little on that one? Because I just kind of like, I'm enjoying I really like the company culture. What I'm like physically doing on the project, I don't love. And I can't remember if I talked about that last week or not, but it's kind of just like, it's just like not very exciting to me. And it's also an industry I know nothing about. And it's an industry that's like not sexy. So it's like a perfect combo of like, I don't care. I don't care.
Okay. Is that such a bad thing? Like, do you feel like you deserve to have that mentality after caring for so many years? Like maybe it's just the existential crisis is coming from like reeling back.
Yeah. And I'm wondering too if it's like maybe because I felt so responsible and so ingrained like in my previous company that it's like, totally, oh, it can be totally different than that. So I'm like trying to embrace it, but also being like, what's going on at the same time. So it's a little weird, but that's okay. What else? This weekend, I am meeting up with one of my mentees. She's going to be in San Diego, so I get to have a little breakfast with her. So Hadassah, if you're listening to this, hi. It will also be after our breakfast, so I hope it was great.
I hope I was cool and you loved me.
And I wear a cool outfit and we talked about good things and I had wonderful advice for you. That's what I'm manifesting. And then next week, wow, it's June. Just kind of getting more project stuff rolling. We had like a couple of this is boring, but like we had some approvals and stuff that we're waiting for. So it's like, hurry up and wait to do not a lot of things. So yeah. Oh, also, I can't believe we've made it this far without me addressing my gorgeous green vest that I referenced earlier as well. So everyone, please look. I'm obsessed with this. I think it's so pretty. I also like that you wore green too. It's like a little simpatico across the room. I'm being so funny today because it's giving me warm fuzzies that you're laughing so much at all my funny things.
I think I'm just laughing because, well, A, you are funny.
Thank you.
But B, that's actually it. You're just funny.
Period. Funny, period. I think that's all the fun things I wanted to update on. Oh my gosh. Another elephant in the room. Sarah has officially shared on LinkedIn her new job update, and people are excited for you.
I did
Tell us about it, Sarah.
Okay, I did not realize. I thought that you had to click like an extra button to like share it with people. I did, but that extra button was to basically like put little sprinkles of like, oh my God, I'm so thankful for so-and-so for this job.
And I'm eternally grateful for this new opportunity. I am so excited to share this new job. It's so silly.
I hate that stuff. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
No, everyone
Anyways.
go comment. Congratulations, Sarah.
No. Okay, so I put it on there because you and I were talking this week about it,
Mm.
and I was like, yeah, I've conquered 2 weeks at this company. Fuck yeah, I get to put it on my LinkedIn. But anyways, yeah, people were commenting, and I think I got the first notification at like 9 o'clock that night, just like a few minutes after posting it, and I was like, what have I done? I did not mean to do this. Yeah. Yeah, so
Your weekly stand-up. Let's hear it.
made it through 2 weeks, which is good. I think like I definitely resonate with the feelings that you're having because it's a lot. Like genuinely to me, it's like if I could have a therapy session about it, it's like unlearning how to be a good girl in a corporate environment. Like I am very much coming to the terms and of like this podcast has helped so much of just being like,
Totally.
it is just a job. And I think also too, like for us having that contract role, like there's boundaries that are put in place, but yeah, there's existential crisis because for, you know, the past 7 years of our 7 or 8 years of our lives, like this has been us. Like your job is you. And so when you have this like disconnect and you don't feel excited by it, you don't feel energized by it, you're kind of like, well, what am I doing just like floating out here? Like you feel like you're floating. The way that I'm seeing it is like I haven't ever floated and I'm trying to embrace the floating. Just for now. It's an interim. It's like a blip. It's easy said than done because some days I'm like sitting at my desk and I'm like, no, actually, what am I doing here? No, actually.
So and like you don't always have to put in 100%. Like
Right.
you can give a solid 80 and still get your work done, and that's okay.
Right.
And you can still kind of
Yeah.
coast through and have that boundary, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that I was going to bring up, so the reason I got this massive project handed to me is because a gentleman was retiring. So taking over this project for him and basically had like 2 weeks to learn everything from him. Like, hey, give me all of the information that you have so that I can successfully run this project.
Not only, so more kudos to you, not only are you taking over mid-project, it's a highly technical project. So it's not just like, oh, get the things done. You have to understand like quite literally an entire new industry. It's probably insane.
Yeah. I mean, I come home and I just kind of like laugh it off, but like when we just did an interview and she was saying that like she felt like her first 3 months at the job, which honestly I'll probably feel this way through the entire job. She felt like it was like drinking from 7 fire hoses, and I absolutely feel that way because I'm learning a new industry. I'm learning a whole new line of project management. I'm like
Yeah.
I cannot tell you that I am confident really in like much of what I'm doing, but I am confident in myself
Good.
to learn. So anyways, there's that. But back to the story of the gentleman. In speaking with him about like, hey, you know, like I'm a Midwesterner. I'm trying to do all these niceties. He's from New York. I'm like, so, you know, dude, I didn't say dude, but I'm just gonna call him dude. Hey, dude, you know, what's your plan for retirement? And he kind of paused, and he goes, you know, I don't really know, but I think that I'm going to learn that so much of who I am and what I do on the daily is connected to my job. And I was like, whoa, you don't really expect to hear that from people that are retired. And I think a lot of people don't face that reality until they're 65 and retire and look back and be like, oh, damn, I missed out on a lot. I was a corporate drone. I did the job. I was successful. I hit 65 and now what the fuck do I do? And I think that I'm thankful that like I have that mentality at 29. I'm so thankful that I have that mentality right now, because if I was who I was, you know, 7 years ago and I stepped foot into this role, I would have had so many emotional breakdowns. I've only had one.
And well deserved.
I would have had probably one every hour. Like truly, truly thinking through it's just a job. But anyways, I had that realization of like talking with someone else, because a lot of, you and I talk, and a lot of the content that I consume like feeds into this narrative. But to hear a gentleman in his late 60s mention it, I was just like, yeah.
It's validating.
Totally. It is validating. So anyways, that's that. But we have a really great episode with Kellyanne. I met Kellyanne, another LinkedIn connection. And so it was really wonderful interviewing her, talking about everything from grinding at a startup to, owning and selling her own business, and now coaching. So there's a lot of really good information, a lot of career learning lessons along the way for her that I hope you get to enjoy. So, Ellen, any parting thoughts?
Everyone go comment on Sarah's LinkedIn. No, I'm kidding.
Stop it. And Ellen, just go buy the damn sweater, okay?
Deal. I have a code too. Maybe I'll get a little discount.
I know. You'd be so silly not to. All right, everyone, enjoy today's episode. We'll see ya. Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another episode. Today, we are joined by Kellyanne Parker out of New York City. She is the bootstrapped founder of Send Ribbon, a corporate gifting company that was acquired by Series C flower and gift startup UrbanStems in 2020. Prior to this acquisition, Kelly served in various growth and leadership roles at startups like Doordash, Indeed, and Managed by Q, which was acquired by WeWork. Since the exit of her company, Kelly has founded B2B to help other female founders launch, grow, and exit their companies. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure.
I am stoked. So a bit of background of how we initially met. This is another one of those like LinkedIn successful stories. Like it's really all of the network. I think that I had a connection, and I was telling you this when we talked yesterday, Kelly. Kelly is a super user of LinkedIn, and she kept coming up. And I was like, okay, I might as well join the feed. I might as well become part of the journey with her.
Drink the Kool-Aid.
Exactly. And so I think I found, or I friended you, or you friended me, and then you sent me this nice message. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's a superstar, and she messaged me.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that, because I just saw recently, I've been on the LinkedIn platform, aging myself, but since like 2010. And it's only in the last few years that I've been able to, serve more folks like yourself, of like women startups and, podcasters. So it's really been just this amazing opportunity to have a community there. And when I saw that y'all know so many people in common and so many followers of Just a Job, I was like, this is something I could get behind. So truly the universe brought us together, and LinkedIn was just that medium.
Totally. I love when that happens.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the community that LinkedIn, we have discovered through LinkedIn, through posting more, through the podcast. It's just so fascinating, and it's really encouraging to really feel that, especially from women who are very successful in their careers and just wanting to support us and other women throughout the LinkedIn space. That's been a really fun community to kind of slowly join and be a part of. So I'm really grateful that LinkedIn brought us all here together today.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So to start things off, Kelly, I'm super curious. When you were growing up, what did you want to be?
Oh my gosh, this is so funny. So just for background, I grew up in Brooklyn, from New York City, and everyone in my life is somehow a first responder, forgive me. So everyone in my life is a first responder, and firemen and police officers, and even service people in the sense of nurses and lawyers and so on. And when I was really little, I would watch the New York Ranger games with my dad and see at like in between periods the Zamboni driver. And I would tell my dad, like at 6 years old, I want to do that. And I want to clean the ice in between the New York Ranger games. And it sounds so silly now that I think about it, because one, I never got a driver's license, then alone machinery. And two, it's so niche, right? There's only one person that does that. But I think it's very telling that I was always looking for, something different. And my skill set wasn't that first responder or service person, but really serving in a different way. But funny looking back to think that I was a little girl that wanted to be on an ice rink.
That
That's
is a
so
first.
sweet. Well, and like what a fun memory that like it's always a time that you were with your dad and watching TV and little kids say the strangest things sometimes, I swear. And then you're like, that is what I want to do. Just seeing it in
Totally.
front
A
of you.
dream job.
Right. That's
You
so
can't
sweet.
don't give up on it. You could still
Right.
you could still be it.
It could be a fun hobby on the side. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, it's so funny to think. But again, I think that entrepreneurial spirit was in me as a kid of like, hey, this person could have fun and go to every Ranger game and provide like a service. And I think I've always had that creative outlet because, school wasn't my favorite thing. So looking for people who had cool jobs. And I knew for a fact you didn't have to go to traditional school, maybe Zamboni schooling, right? So I think that was something that I looked toward.
Okay. As someone who also did not enjoy school and also didn't do very well in school, I also looked for other potential career avenues that didn't necessarily require me to be doing, let's say, chemistry or any kind of algebra. So I definitely resonate with that of looking something for maybe more creative or hands-on, I'll say. You mentioned school a little bit. Talk to us about college, what that experience was like for you, and how you selected what major, etc.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a first generation college graduate of my immediate
Amazing.
family. So, like I said, a lot of the people in my life, have been called to service type careers. And I just naturally was not good in an emergency. And I didn't think that that would be for me. And I had my heart set. I won't give them credit. I had my heart set on a college in the Washington, D.C. area. And it absolutely broke my heart when I didn't get in. And I kind of put all my eggs in one basket. We're looking at local schools. And finally, we're like in my best friend's parents' kitchen, like hysterical crying, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's like the end of May. Where am I going to go? And I selected the school that they actually went to college at. So I went to my best friend's parents, their alumni of my undergrad. And it was a small Catholic school in North Carolina. I loved it. I met so many wonderful people. And right out of college, the day I graduated, I came right back to New York and kind of started my career in startups. So school to me was something that I had to get through. I studied English and business. Again, probably could have double majored, but avoided all the accounting and finance classes. So I really have like more of that like marketing communication skill set. But yeah, I loved my time there. Looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was such a fish out of water, like big New York City girl in this small town, small city. But like I said, I made friends for a lifetime. And, I really just think that it was a good place for me to have structure, right? Like as someone who needed someone to look after her, any one of my professors that would be listening to this would be like, yeah, she needed us to make sure she was going to class and doing the right thing and not staying out all night. So I'm very glad that I went to a smaller college.
Amazing. I was going to ask just about your experience of like growing up, because I think that our experience is a little bit flipped as far as I grew up in a small town and I thought I went to like the big city, which, and it's so funny. I went to K-State. It was like 50,000 people. So I'm sure for you to like have that as one of the kind of first probably big pivotal moments in your life where you're experiencing this big transition. And at 18, it feels like it's everything. But it sounds like it worked out really well. So then you graduated, you were like, peace out to North Carolina. I'm heading back to the city where my heart is. What was that experience like as far as finding a job and then making that transition back into city life, but also too back into working full time?
It's a great question. And going back to LinkedIn, I was applying for jobs in New York my spring semester of my senior year. And I remember coming home for spring break to New York and interviewing. And all of these were cold outreach through LinkedIn and through other, like I said, my network was very much like, not people in business. My mom had a few contacts, but it was just very much like me trial and error with a resume and like a smile and being like, hey, I'm going to figure this out. And I actually got a job with a sports marketing agency right out of school, but it was part-time because the NFL was on strike. Again, I'm aging myself. Really pivotal moment though. I was working part-time, going to all the Yankees, Jets, and Giants games for the MetLife campaign, just doing like marketing coordinator, brand ambassador work. And I actually kept that job all through my first year out of college and got my first job in a startup that was owned by AOL. So it was called Patch.com and it was acquired by AOL. So my first year out of college, I was doing double duty. I truly had a 40-hour work week, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and then all nights and weekends, Jets, Giants, and Yankee games for like a full year and a half. So I was very much addicted to the grind of New York and the startup life. And that was very telling early on, was like, hey, I can't be great at school. Like, it's just certain things aren't clicking. I don't love someone telling me what to do in certain ways and that structure. But I loved being in a place where a startup every day looks different and, things are crazy and you're just given way more responsibility at a younger age with less experience. And I was a go-getter and someone that really thrived in that like Wild West environment. So it was, an amazing experience and absolutely set me up for, the 15 plus years that happened after that.
That's
Working
amazing.
2 jobs. Wow. What was one of that first year I think is so crucial out of school, but then also to have 2 part-time jobs to where you're working a full schedule, even like you said, even on the weekends. What was maybe the best learnings that came out of that first year of college from you in that first crazy schedule that you had?
Yeah, absolutely. I really think about this a lot now because I mentor so many younger women early in their career, and they always ask me, like, how'd you do it? How did you figure it out? And so much of it was behavioral and body language and understanding what made someone tick and really showing up, right? So, like, being on time, being the last one in the office, like really taking good notes at meetings, sending recap emails, like doing the little things that, people appreciate. It just went such a long way. And I remember the Jets and the Giants games, right? Like that was not a thing that I could just like learn from an office environment, but I knew that if I interacted with the fans and people were having a great time, like our supervisors would notice, and I think one of them tapped me on the shoulder once and was like, hey, how do we recreate 10 of you? And it was like such a like really, humbling thing of like, that's so nice. But like, I am trying really hard because no, I don't want to stand here in 20-degree weather every Saturday for the next, the next few years. But when I look back at like all of those opportunities, they all came from, the extra mile. And I will say some of it comes with, a little bit of a price. I think I worked really, really hard for what I had. But at the same time, this was before the shift in work from home, the shift in, taking breaks, the shift in mindset of wellness. So I just want to caveat that like this was very much the early days of hustle culture. And I was, you know, I don't want to say a ringleader, but very much like drinking the Kool-Aid of, okay, I'm in
Mm-hmm.
New York City. I'm going to work two full-time jobs and move up the ladder as quickly as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, I was just talking, and I think it sparked conversation. We were talking about it yesterday, Kellyanne, but I was talking with my husband about like the hustle culture, right? And how the hustle culture like still remains, but it just has a different color lipstick on.
Mm.
And like I think that when you look back like 10 years, the hustle culture was like, I'm going to do everything I can to be the superstar A student in my role. And I'm going to go above and beyond. And like, if that requires 60 hours a week, so be it. Like, I am chomping at the bit to just be this, like I said, A+ student. And nowadays, like the hustle culture still remains, but it just looks different. It's boundaries that I have within work, but also like that allows me to then hustle on the side and like do things that I want to do. So
Mm.
we're still hustling in some sense. It just looks a little bit different. And I think the reasoning behind it is a little bit different. There's potentially some more ownership now where it's like I'm doing things that I want to do. Like I'm working just as much, but those 20 extra hours is 10 years ago, I would have been spending at the company. I'm now spending on myself and my own business or like my own passions. And it's just interesting. I think like the idea of the hustle culture. And I do think that it will like always continue to change and like it'll just iterate forever.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine like 10 years ago, and I think it's also interesting your perspective of like I was very much subscribed to it. And I think
Oh,
that a
yeah.
lot of people are when they first come out of school, like as if I'm not skilled enough, I have to go like above and beyond just to prove that like I belong here.
Mm-hmm.
Do
Well,
you
Well,
I
Oh, go
was
ahead.
just going to add, you make such a great point. It also has to do with the times, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was in college during 2010, and I had seen so many of my friends graduate around that time that they were like, don't come home. If you have a job in Charlotte, if you could figure this out, like, New York's so hard, everyone's losing their jobs. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't ever going to get rid of a part-time job in that environment when
Definitely.
my full-time job at a startup could be gone at any moment, right? Like, and
right.
that
Mm-hmm.
was the crisis that we were in, was that people were losing their jobs left and right. So I think you're right in the sense that it's changed and we now get to pick and choose our side hustles, and employers are now more open to that. But I really do think personally it came from a place of fear, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
how am I going to afford to live if
Yeah.
I, lose my job? Because we aren't talking about mega bucks, ladies. We're talking about like really, really piecing it together and
Yeah.
living in my parents' house, childhood bedroom in Brooklyn, and just trying to, cover my Metro card to get to and from work, like at
Mm-hmm.
that point, I think I was still like denying lunches, I would be like, no, I'm fine. I brought lunch, so,
Right.
it's definitely, a change in culture and shift in mindset,
Yes.
2024 versus 2010.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Definitely.
and I think back to that time too, and like I even idolized it. Like I remember watching movies of being like The Devil
Mm-hmm.
Wears Prada or How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Like
Yes.
I want to be the girl in the office walking on their treadmill, which like I do that now, which is hysterical, but I want to be that. And I've said this story before, but I graduated college on a Saturday and I started my new job on a Monday because I thought that's what you
Same.
did. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so idolized of going the extra mile, sending the emails after 5 p.m. when you really shouldn't, but you want to get ahead, so you're going to do it anyways, and working on the weekends. That it's really interesting to see the shift go from that to prioritizing your own mental health. But I do think that there are really important takeaways, like what you said during your first year of experience out of school. Those little extra things of, like you said, doing meeting minutes and sending recapped emails, showing up on time. Like those really are small things that you can do daily that don't require a ton of extra effort that truly do set you apart when it comes time to find a new job, get a reference, get a promotion. Like I really think those things do matter and you can do them without sacrificing your mental health at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm. It's all
Exactly.
all
And
about.
I would just add, and it's not like, the idea of like the suck up or like someone's bringing you a coffee or something like that, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
not asking for anyone's time. You're just doing it without someone
Right.
asking you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's like a really natural thing, right? Like it's like, hey, TLDR, these are four things that came out of that meeting. And it's like, wow, someone's paying attention, listening and learning, right? Like, because sometimes it's just you want other people to know that you're there, right? And like the visibility is
Mm.
more now important with a work from home situation for younger women is like they should know your name, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
your name on Slack, like they're, I sat in on a meeting the other day about personal branding internally and how in bigger companies this is even more critical. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's all a learning. And like you said, just going back to that evolution of how to do it in 2024 where, your boss doesn't see you at your desk at, 6 o'clock eating dinner there and working the extra hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
So um, a lot to be learned in how to do it in today's world too.
Totally.
Definitely. So then, Kellyanne, I want to know about your experience. You had mentioned working startup. What was either the next phase into your next role? Was there something that was pushing you out or pulling you out? Did your next job find you? What was that transition?
Yeah, I would say two things. So I've always utilized um, I've always utilized the tools available to me to understand the market, right? And one
Mm-hmm.
of the tools early on was Twitter, and I would follow like some of my favorite companies and different startups and news. So I was always not job searching, but understanding, okay, this team is growing, they're going to need someone
Mm-hmm.
eventually, and just really understanding other people's companies. That was something that I did early on, and it definitely gave me a leg up of really understanding the New York tech landscape. Um, I was very fortunate in the middle of my career. I had actually made a mistake, and I humbly want to share this because I think a lot of people are scared to keep something on their resume or make that era. But I was interviewing in Uber in 2013, 2014, and actually was invited to take the position, but they saw Charlotte, my undergrad school, on my resume, and they asked me to move down there because they were launching the North Carolina market. And it was a huge decision, and I made the trip down there, and I made like myself move from like all my friends and my family here in New York, and I had a handful of friends from college still there. And within 3 months I knew instantly I had made a big mistake. I didn't want to be there. I didn't like the role. And I had a family emergency at home. And I just had to cut my losses, like pack up, tell them like, hey, this isn't working out for me, and move back to New York. And I think that was just a really pivotal moment in my career because Uber 2013, 2014, that was
Mm-hmm.
like your ticket, right? Like you
Yeah.
just got into Harvard, you can't say no. And what I've learned is jobs, like the name of the podcast, it's just a job, right? And at the end of the day, no one was going to look at me and my resume and what I bring to the table and be like, you said no to Uber. I said no to the location and the job and the timing, and it just wasn't a fit. And for the longest time, I beat myself up about that. And then truly weeks later, I ended up at a pre-series A seed startup in 1,000 square foot office in Chinatown. And I was employee number 8, and we grew to, hundreds of employees and were acquired by WeWork. So the next opportunity is always behind it. And I think I struggled with that for so long, way too long. Couldn't let it go that like I had this shot at Uber. And the truth of the matter is, I have some of the most talented, incredible people from my next job that have continued to root for me, and I've worked with them at different companies and we've done business deals together. And that 3 years was so incredibly pivotal in building my own business and that support system. So sometimes, you make you make a era at the time, but it lands you something even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the butterfly effect of all of that. Because I know what
Yeah.
comes next. And it's like to think that this version of you likely wouldn't have existed without that decision that you made. And as tough as it was, like you didn't have access to the future to know what your life would look like and that everything would be totally fine, if not better than what you expected.
Mm-hmm.
But I can imagine that kind of like growing feeling in your chest and in your gut where you're like, this is just not right. And to get to the point to say and stand up for yourself, like kudos to former life Kellyanne, because I can imagine that was really difficult, but it sounds like you've
Mm-hmm.
worked through it and like obviously it worked out really, really well. But the butterfly
Yeah.
effect of that, like I think sometimes you think about like the butterfly effect in like your personal life, but like
Mm.
in your career, I mean, there's so many moments of opportunities, so many doors opening, so many doors closing, and I don't know. I got little chills while you were telling that story. So thank you for sharing that with
Of
us.
course. And I will just say, like, working with people and learning from them and learning their backgrounds, like, my time at Uber, even though it was 3 months and I felt like I didn't make an impact, my direct manager actually came 2 years later to the startup. I brought him over. So he was interviewing, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was my manager at Uber, and now he's at Q. So that
Yeah.
has happened to me over and over again, where he probably wouldn't have even known of that job if I didn't take the leap, and having the privilege to work with him twice and multiple people in my career, like I said, it was the catalyst, and I learned more in those 3 years than I did in 4 years of college, and so on. So very thankful that I had the opportunity to make that career mistake, because at the
Yeah.
time it kept me up at night, and I'm so glad that I actually did do something braver and just chalk it
Mm-hmm.
up as a loss in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Like stories like this is like pinch me. This is like why we made the podcast and like why
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to share stories like this, because myself, Sarah, I know you have people listening. They all go through that uh-oh, holy shit moment of like, now
Yeah.
what do I do? Like, I made a mistake or I lost my job. Like, and it's all consuming and it keeps you up at night and you don't know, you can't see your way out of it. But hearing
Mm-hmm.
stories like this of so many women that have gone through similar ish experiences through their career evolution, that this happened. And while it was all consuming in the moment, you can now look back on it and say, I'm so glad that that happened because look at where it's brought me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about the experience of working at that like ground floor level of that startup. What was that like? And then the evolution of seeing it grow and you growing with it.
Yeah, I think about this often because it was not just that professional growth, but it was that personal growth, right? It was just doing something bigger than yourself with very talented, smart people and that extreme trust. And I think I said earlier how I didn't have that inclination of serving others, in a physical way, right? Like as a firefighter or as a police officer or a nurse, I knew that I wasn't in that way going to be able to serve, but to be able to serve our customers and to be able to serve by creating more jobs early on in a startup, like truly seeing the impact of my work was really, really like my driving force. And the other thing is when you are, I'll just use the analogy again of working in that type of intense environment, right? You have to trust the people around you, right? Like we are
Mm-hmm.
in a tiny office for 12 hours a day, and we're not getting up, and truly the product and service that we sold was office cleaning. And there was a point where many of us tell like the war stories of this startup where we would work all day and clean people's offices at night when we didn't have cleaners on hand,
Yeah.
you know. And there are people professionally. I was at a cocktail party with all founders and CEOs, and I remember like there being someone that introduced themselves to me, and I'm like, yeah, well, they will never believe this story, but 8 years ago, I cleaned the bathrooms at your startup. You know, it's really, again, like amazing to be in it and be like, hey, we're gonna build something really big. And you know, I just had such a privilege to be a part of a team that every day was dedicated to getting better. Like, and I mean, we were just in the business of creating a category and in the business of helping one another and making sure that our customers knew that they were heard, and that they trusted us, that even if something went awry, we were going to show up. And I've learned more about how to show up for people professionally and personally just from my time there. And I think that's really kind of the creative juice behind being thoughtful and getting into gifting was definitely how, you know, carefully and thought out I was to our clients.
I love that. Then, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself because we talked yesterday about this.
Yeah.
But the story of building your business. So you kind of just highlighted that's when you started to learn. At what point were you like, I'm on to something, there's an opportunity, and then when you took that first step, that first bit of action towards it?
Yeah. So I had moved teams. I was our original salesperson, and I had never sold anything before. And I was really, again, startup life, like just learning as I go. And originally it was like all inbound. Our two founders went out to California to finish their fundraise of the Series A. And they were kind of like, hey, Kelly Parker, go man the phones. Like if anyone calls and wants our service, be able to, you know, set them up with Managed by Q. And eventually it got to the point where it was like, okay, we also need you to do some outbound because we need like more customers. We want to like secure this round. So I started doing, you know, some cold outreach, like warm introductions. Any person that would ever speak to me, I was like, hey, I'm Kelly. Can we clean your office? Like, and it really was exactly like that. And 3 years into it, I switched teams because as a business, we had added much more than office services. You know, we had janitorial and handymen and products and so on. So there was a huge opportunity for us to upsell our existing clients. And we really made that shift in the business. A lot of kind of SaaS companies or, you know, tech companies make that shift between customer service and customer success. And we were really going towards a success model where we want to be your go-to person for all things office, right? So as we did that, those people in those roles need to have that relation building skill set and be able to upsell. So it was just a natural progression for me to move over to that team. And while I was doing that, we were given, you know, like gifting or entertainment budgets to, you know, take a client out to coffee or so on. And that's when I started testing, really thoughtful listening and going back to Twitter, right? Of like knowing the ins and outs of people's companies and what was important to them. And like anytime someone got funding, we sent a bottle of champagne, right? And like just things like that we were doing to socially listen to our customers. But I use the example of like whenever I sent something to someone's office that was fast, quick, and easy, and very generic, I wouldn't get a thank you. But if a customer said to me like, hey, I'm actually going on a trip to San Diego next week, like here's my out of office point of contact if anything comes up, and I like ran around the city and went to Dwayne Reed and got like a bottle of sunblock and a disposable camera and put together like this gift for their vacation and sent it to their office, immediately I would get like an email, thank you so much, Kelly, that was so thoughtful, blah blah blah. And it just built rapport, right? It showed that I was listening, it showed that I cared about their business, that they should trust that we have it while they're gone, like enjoy your vacation. And should any future thing come up, like, you have my cell phone number, you know I care, like we could work this out, right? As where when you don't have that relationship, it's very easy to come back and be like, I'm canceling the service, right? Like this is more work for me. Like this didn't go right. So it was really in those moments where I was able to show up again for our customers. And that's when I started like testing different models. And eventually, I didn't have a product in market, but I knew I wanted to build a gifting business. I just had a lot of user experience, right? Like I had known what products work, and I had a lot of people to interview of what do you look for in a gift, what makes a great gift, and so on. And our CEO gave me the best truly gift of all when I told him I was leaving after 3+ years and being a first 10 employee. He said, if you ever need anything or if you fail, you always have a job here. And I never had to make that phone call. I truly only called him when my business was about to exit. And I was like, hey, you've done this before. Can I ask you some questions? But I think for someone like me, that as much as I'm risk adverse, having that golden parachute and having the one person that has supported you and believed in you for 3 years and building a business, having that trust, because again, first generation college student, I can't just take that risk, right? I don't have a backup plan. And the day I started my business, I had less than $5,000 to my name. So it was quite the risk. And I think I kind of did it with the intention of knowing like, well, in the event this fails, I could go back to slinging cleaning services around New York. But yeah, that's how Send Ribbon was kind of born. And I left that January and I launched in May. I had no time. I had absolutely no time for it to be the perfect product or the perfect service. I just had to start getting things into market and trying things right away.
That's so fun. I love hearing these stories of like how businesses come to be and how it just seems like such a natural progression of what your experience was, testing some things. You're starting to get the wheels going and hey, I can do this and I can do it in a way that I think is the best way. And what were those first, you said you left in January and launched in May. What were those couple of months like getting everything up and ready and sharing with friends and family? What was that experience like?
Yeah, so it was really cool doing like these milestones kind of in the background. Like I had bought my domain for my company before I had an idea. Like I was just like, all right, I'm going to be an entrepreneur one day. I like these two words, Send Ribbon. It makes sense. It's going to be mail, like I had already had ideas. And I can't tell you all my trade secrets, but I will say I'm not like a purse or a shoes gal. I'm very much a domain gal. And whenever I get an idea, I buy one right away.
Yep.
So I'm certainly not rich in luxury goods, but I do own quite a handful of funny domain names. Everyone has their vice, right?
Oh, yeah.
So things like that in the background that I was doing, like getting our trademarks, getting my LLC, like those were all little milestones that I was doing. And then sourcing products and testing things. I will say this was all while my parents happened to be snowbirding in Florida, and I was in their house basically squatting and building this company. And they came home that May and there were pallets of product and candles and chocolate and gift bags and all of it, of me putting together these things. Um, so, it was a really interesting time because I went from the early days of Q again, right? Where I was wearing so many different hats and assigning myself roles that I had never done, like sales before. It's like, okay, now I have that skill set of sales and marketing from being at Q, but I don't know how to pack orders. I don't know how to, weigh pallets to make sure that we're compliant. Like there were so many
Yeah.
crazy things. So it was really a learning. It was truly every day. And whenever I came across a really hard problem, I was out there trying to find an expert, like asking someone like, who do you use for, whatever the problem was. And that I started like kind of a board of experts per se, to kind of help navigate what I was facing, because I had no employees, I had no money, and I was just like really hacking together this idea.
That answers my question. I was going to ask, in the sense of being an entrepreneur and doing it individually, not having a team, like how do you feel like now? Well, that's not the question. It's like how did you navigate that? Like by building, in your days with Q, you're building something, but you're building alongside people. And I think that, energy feeds energy. So to like even on your toughest days, know that you still have somebody standing next to you. Like how did you navigate that once you made that jump to like full ownership? It's, a one woman team. How did you manage that? Obviously, like when it came to business questions, you had these people outside of it, but like how are you taking care of yourself in those moments?
For the first time in my life, it came to like a real head of like, okay, you could work 15 hours or you could work 5, and the results were very similar if you're just looking at the results of how many sales did we get today or how many orders do you have to pack, right? And it was a very different model, because we were working, I still say it, right? It was me. I was working on acquiring larger customers so that I would just work with 10 to 15 whale customers versus individual orders. And the website ran where you can buy a gift and they can be individual orders. But the goal was really to work with, the Googles and Whole Foods of the world where they're ordering 100 gifts for their employees or clients, right? So getting those handful of corporate gifting for conferences or events and so on. It was just about constantly building a pipeline. So it was a very different tactical waiting game in the beginning. And because I launched in May, there's a dip in corporate gifting in the summer. And then it obviously picks up really big at the end of the year. And, anyone in the space says like Christmas in July. And the truth is, Christmas in July for corporate gifting is a real thing. Like the majority of the larger companies have secured their gifting partners by Labor Day. So I was really looking to launch that in May so that my Christmas in July could be secured for those December and January orders.
That's a wild journey for sure. I'm glad that you were able, and funny that you still say we.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I like that.
I used to answer the site chat and the phone, and they would be like, "Can I speak to the owner?" And like, I'd be like, "Please hold," and like wait. Like so those were those were like things like that would come up. I think eventually we had an alias for orders so that if I was doing customer service, again, this is all before AI. I just went to a conference at Shopify and there's so many more tools. Like now in looking back of all the ways I was super gritty, I'm just so happy for the founders I work with now on all the tools that they have access to. And I'm constantly learning about new products and tools so that I could support them, because I'm like, hey, this is a time saver, this is a money saver, and every founder needs to do that because there's a lot of different roadblocks. They just look different than the ones I faced 7 years ago. But yeah, I think we're in a world with evolving technology, and I'm really excited for what's to come.
Yeah, definitely. I love when people bring us into next questions. It just makes our job so easy. So thank you. Talk to us about present day and what you're working on, a little bit of the close of your business, and then what you're doing now.
Took the full exit, and it was something that came at a time where it was so good because it was right after another holiday season, and I don't think I had it in me to do another Valentine's Day or Mother's Day. But I went through this like real bad period of grief, and a lot of founders, I didn't know this at the time, a lot of founders go through this post exit of like, what's next? Am I a one-hit wonder? All these feelings of like, I would have done this differently, or how this would have ended. So I always call the year after my exit my eat, pray, love year. I had a handful of like health issues and surgeries. So I got into running. I was able to travel a ton and go to Ireland and visit my cousins, and go to Greece. So I did take time off as an exited founder, and really reflect on what I want to do. I was in the world of being coached and coaching others, and I knew that at some point that was the place I wanted to play in. Unfortunately, I did take a role post exit at a startup, and they had mass layoffs. So I was impacted, and at that point I was like, okay, I don't need to work for someone else again. Like, I have this platform, I have this community, and now's my time. And I think there was a period of a little bit of imposter syndrome in there, like, oh, I should just get a job, right? Or I should just go back to startups. And then I realized, like, I'm just a body sitting in a chair, and I'm not utilizing the skill set that I have to help other women. So that is my North Star now. Like, I will make sure that I am providing, other female founders with, not just these war stories and funny like anecdotes of my journey, but real tactical advice on how to launch, how to grow, and how to exit their companies. Because in every stage of my journey, I felt these really big feelings, right? And I thought that would end at the exit. And then I found out that I was actually really going through it. This is like my baby, the thing I built. On Friday, I had one of my founders launch her business, so it's that same pride of we're doing it. And then in the background, truly, I know I want to build again, so in addition to speaking and podcasting and all of the wonderful things that this community has brought, I have found another niche of where I could serve. And hopefully in the next year or so, I will launch what will be my second act in a product.
Ooh, that's exciting.
I will say this, I don't know if I'll do it alone this time. I think there's a lot of talent, and I have a very good friend and former coworker that would want to, can join forces there. There's so many things, I think, going back to what Sarah says of like, the evolution of like hustle culture, or, changing and making boundaries. I think those are ones that I'm putting in early of like, hey, I'm not 22 anymore. I have, a handful of hobbies and a lot of interests and a lot of people relying on me that I need to be able to put those boundaries in early, and serve myself before I go out and just run at another goal.
Right. It's interesting to what you learn along the way and how you're going to make the changes going forward. I love that. Sarah, go ahead.
I want to say like I appreciate you sharing the emotion that you had
Mm,
post exit, because I think a lot of times from the outside looking in, I mean, I think with like kind of any phase of life where there's this big hoorah, it's this expectation that like you wipe your hands clean of it and then you start fresh and you're on to the next thing. But just like anything in life, when something ends, there's a mourning, there's grieving, something's
yeah.
ending. And especially because you had single-handedly the entire company, like you were relishing in these feelings by yourself and you had to
Mm,
navigate them by yourself. And I'm sure even in like the circle and the network that you've created, like discussing those feelings, like knowing that you're not alone in that and that you can get through it, like the basically post exit blues, if you will. And I'm sure that that's
Exactly.
even minimizing the feelings that you had, but I think it's important to talk about that because at any point in your life, there's something will always come to some sort of conclusion. And I think it's important to talk about the feelings that it's not always like this big, big celebration. There's also like some tough feelings that come with that. So thank you for
hmm
sharing. I'm going to ask you the big question. How do you define success?
Oh, I love this. And I'll go back to when I first started Send Ribbon, because I remember being so discouraged. I was having so many conversations with so many people in network, and I had a conversation with a guy in the tech world, and I told him about Send Ribbon and what I was building, and he said, "That's cute. It's like an Etsy shop." And
No.
I remember feeling so little in that moment and being
Mm,
like, okay, well, he doesn't understand that in my inbox, I have purchase orders from real
Mm-hmm.
companies and people who like what I'm going to do and people
Mm-hmm.
who, are going to bet on me, right? So in that moment, he didn't know and I didn't know, but the truth in that moment is I was defining success when I first started Send Ribbon by could this replace my annual salary? Can I work for myself and can this replace what I was previously earning and potentially work less hours? And I did. I definitely worked less hours. I didn't clean one startup office toilet while
Ever
doing
again.
that. But that was how I defined success, right? And then the goalpost kept getting further. It was just like, okay, can you cover your health insurance? Can you cover your salary? Can you be profitable? And I think the day we became profitable, it was like, whoa, okay, what's the next thing? And um, the I couldn't afford PR, so I was writing to editors like, can you get us on a gift list? And like I was like, wow, the first time I saw Send Ribbon like on the internet and like in publications like Pure Wow and The Knot and BuzzFeed gift list, I was like, oh my gosh, like it's on BuzzFeed and it's being shipped out of my parents' basement. Like, cool. So
Mm-hmm.
the goalpost just kept getting further and I kept pushing myself harder. But at the end of the day, that was always the goal was who cares if, someone thinks it's small or I'm crazy. It's like, hey, it has nothing to do with them and everything to do with this is my job. And if someone told me Send Ribbon was never going to get bigger and it was just going to cover my annual salary and health insurance and I could do it until I was 90, I would have. I was okay with
Mm-hmm.
going into it as I'm a small business owner. And I think by not capping what this could be, but giving myself the goals and the true outcomes of this is what you need to do to accomplish that and define success
hmm
allowed me to move the goalpost instead of reaching from the stars from the beginning. It was like, this is what you need to do here and then continue to grow it.
hmm
Mm.
Good for you for not allowing that silly man for saying that it was a cute idea. Ay, ay, ay. But I love the idea of setting a goal for yourself that is what one is fulfilling to you, but is also quite attainable so that you're not setting yourself up for failure for you set this crazy expectation for yourself and when you don't meet it you're disappointed. That's like even Sarah and I have done that with goals for the podcast as well of okay, this would make us happy if we did this and it's attainable. It's not bringing in $8 million every year or something crazy like that, you know? And I think I love that you said that you moved the goalpost, because once you reached that, it's like, okay, I'm celebrating. I made it to this milestone that I wanted, but now what can I do? And as you kept going, I'm sure that that feeling of empowerment continued with you as you made it further on and were further successful in your business as well. Okay, let's get into some rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
Uh-oh.
All right. My first one. One thing you cannot live without during the workday.
Oh, Sarah knows this. An iced coffee in a Guinness pint glass, because it scares anyone I'm talking to. All day long, they're like, Kelly, it is 9 a.m. But yes, I have all my iced coffees that I make at home. I put it in a Guinness pint glass. So it just brings it to more of a casual pub vibe here in the office.
It's a good conversation starter. I like that.
Yes, it was quite funny. And we talked about it, and then I talked about how usually by the end of the day my iced coffee turns into like a little like Hatch rocks glass, and I look like I'm drinking a cocktail. So maybe that's what we should do moving forward. We should all just put our caffeinated beverages in glasses,
Okay, well,
and pretend like we're at the pub.
Yes.
I've got my fancy little iced coffee.
Exactly. No, it really is funny because, you know, not to give into any stereotypes, but when you see a woman drinking out of a Guinness pint glass at 9 a.m., they know not to mess with me, right?
Yeah, she means business.
Right.
Next question for you. What's one of the best benefits that you've ever had at a job?
Oh, I was at a startup once where everyone had the same vacation week. And I thought that was such a cool, really amazing idea, because no one texted or called me because they were also off.
I've never heard of that. Jinx. That's really cool. Okay. Future note for myself for later. What is your favorite corporate catchphrase?
Oh. I don't know if it's favorite, but I get called out about it a lot. I say keep me abreast, which is like just so foreign and so like not, it ages even me. I don't know, but I have said it so many times and people look at me puzzled, and my closest friends know that I say it and will make fun of like corporate Kelly about keep me abreast.
Keep me abreast.
Yeah, so that's just stupid, but I have done
That's
it.
funny. You're slinging us all the new things today. I feel like I'm learning so much. Okay. And then last question, what is your favorite way to unwind after work?
Sure. So I will say that I'm very fortunate. I live in New York City, but I moved to the beach. So I live in a suburban urban area of I'm still in the 5 boroughs, but I live just 2 blocks south of the Atlantic Ocean, and we have a boardwalk. So whether that's walking, running, or bike riding, the beach is pretty cool to be like, hey, I was in Manhattan at 2 and the beach at 5.
Totally.
Yeah.
A dream.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. Best of both worlds for sure.
Totally.
Oh, yeah. I have the Delaware River not too far away from me.
Ooh,
It's a little dirty. Yeah.
Sarah's adjusting to the East Coast. I love it. We've welcomed you.
Thank you. Well, Kellyanne, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today and talking through all the transitions, the crazy things, and what's yet to come. So we will make sure to include all of Kellyanne's socials where you can find her. Like I said, she is top notch on LinkedIn, so definitely follow her, check her out. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. And at the end of the day, it's just a job.
Kelly, you stole my line.
Oh, I stole it. All right,
I love that.
You do it. All right, do it. Oh my God, we can say
no, that's perfect. That means it's working. We can say it in synchronicity. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Well, everyone will include where you can find us: TikTok, LinkedIn, social, all of the places. And again, remember, it's just a job. Thanks, everyone. Bye.